Hey everybody! It has been a couple weeks, but I'm so happy to be back. With school and track finishing up, school finishing and track getting up, it's been a little bit of a time, but we're going to be back on now. We're going to get back on our schedule, so I'm super excited about that. So we had been talking about climate change. We just finished talking up carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases. And today we're going to jump into renewable versus non-renewable. Just do a quick thing over this. Remember, there's a lot more content. There's a lot more material for all these. This is just kind of a framework, a kind of a groundwork. So you can kind of have some knowledge when people bring up, well, renewable versus non-renewable resources or energy. So we know there's a lot of debate and discussion, and it centers around what is non-renewable versus renewable. Well, non-renewable resources, the ones that we typically talk about, are fossil fuels. Now, fossil fuels are fuels that are created from fossils under huge amounts of pressure and heat. These are typically coal, oil, natural gas, those types of things. Now, some pros for these are that they're cheap, they are reliable, they're consistent, and they're dependable. And when I say cheap, I mean they're cheap both initially and in the long run. So getting them started up and in the long run, they're both cheap. Now, some cons that we normally hear about are unfriendly to the environment. There can be accidental spills. So like we can have explosions of natural gas. We can have spills of oil into oceans. And a huge one is that they're unsustainable. So fossil fuels do take a lot of time to produce, but remember that's old Earth versus young Earth. Old Earth would tell us that it takes millions of years. We know that that can't be possible if we believe in young Earth, because the Earth wouldn't be millions of years old. So that's also where we kind of get in this unsustainable thing. Is they're like, well, it takes thousands and thousands of years or millions of years to do. But if we believe in the young Earth theory, then we know that that can't be the case, and they actually reproduce quicker. So that's something we won't even dive into today, but that's just something to keep in your mind. They're only unsustainable if the Earth is millions and billions of years old. If it is thousands of years old, they're actually pretty sustainable. So there's also a fourth form of non-renewable energy, and we'll talk about that at the end. But what I really, really want to focus on today is the renewable energy types. We hear so much talk about how we have to go renewable, we have to go green, we have to get away from fossil fuels. And I'm going to talk about the big three, so hydro, solar, and wind. And we're going to kind of look at what that all entails, like if we were to get away from them all. So if we were to go with hydropower is water power from falling or fast flowing water. And that's converting kinetic energy into electrical energy. So kinetic energy is the energy that's moving. So when I'm in motion, I have kinetic energy. When I'm standing still, I have potential. So every time I go like this, I'm using kinetic. If I hold my hand here, I have potential. So the water flowing has kinetic energy, and we take that energy and we make it into electrical energy. Now, the problem with hydropower is that it is very, very expensive to construct. So the startup for hydropower is astronomical. That's why we don't see a lot of hydropower being utilized, because it costs a lot of money and you have to have a flowing water source. You can't just put this on a lake. It has to be a river, waterfalls, things that are flowing. That's why we dam rivers, because we have the river. It doesn't look like it, but that river is flowing into it. And then as we let water out, it's turning the flowing water into electrical energy. Now, while they're really expensive to construct, its cost per kilowatt hour is actually really low. It's about 85 cents per kilowatt hour. So hydropower actually is very, once it gets going, it is a good cost, but you have to pay for that startup, which is huge amounts of money. So hydro is good. We have that, but it relies on running water. So someone who does not live next to a river, does not live next to somewhere that could get running water supplies, can't really benefit from hydro. And that's where we bring in the other two, because they say, well, we have to use all of them together. So solar, energy from the sun that is captured in the form of electrical or thermal energy. awesome concept, solar power, except we have to look at how did the solar panels get made? Well, we had to use fossil fuels to make our solar panels because we can't produce enough energy to make our own solar panels from solar. So we have to use fossil fuels there, so they actually aren't renewable energy because we are using non-renewable energy sources to produce them. So it kind of defeats the purpose on it. If we're using a non-renewable energy to produce a renewable energy, that renewable energy can no longer be considered renewable because it has to be made using non-renewables. And then besides that, we get into a problem with solar power of what if it gets too hot or too cold? So in other words, let's take a look at what happened in California. It got really hot one summer. And now we start to kick the ACs on because we like to be comfortable. We can't deal with the heat. We can't be hot for a little bit. Us as humans, we're like, no, it's getting hot. Let's kick on that air conditioner. I have 2 daughters coming and I'm already told that I need to get some window units in here to keep it cool inside of our house. Now the problem with that is air conditioners take energy to work. They take energy to cool down the air. And what happened in California was there was so much energy being needed to keep people cool that rolling blackouts started to occur because the solar panels were not producing enough energy to keep up with the demands. So they ended up having to start doing rolling blackouts. And what gets worse is that if it's not, California is a place that's super sunny. We have a lot of sun there, so we can have a lot of solar energy. Now in a place that doesn't have a lot of sun, say like Oregon, Washington, solar power would not work at all or well at all because, well, it's very cloudy there a lot of the year. So those clouds would start to hurt us with the energy production. And this is just when we're doing our ACs. Now, think about a place where I live, Colorado. It's warm during the summer, it gets hot during the summer, but then during the winter it gets pretty chilly. If I need to kick on my heating takes way more energy than cooling. So if there's rolling blackouts with air conditioning, there's going to be huge rolling blackouts if we need to heat our homes, if we need to get our homes heated up to a certain amount. So one of the problems with that is